Welcome to Issues of Contemporary Politics with Dr. Brovkin. Today is the 9th of June, and my presentation focuses on the continuing war in Ukraine, and it is called today Russian Fury. The Retribution begins. Now, sometimes in history there are moments which are the turning points, which are everything changes in a matter of days. And this is, we are living now through one of those moments. Exactly in a matter of 8 or 10 days, the nature of the special military operation has changed. And now it is called a anti-terrorist campaign rather than a special military operation, is transitioning to a new phase, and the phase that is characterized by very, very fast Russian advance, by new measures that will be taken. And this is what we're going to discuss today: the situation in Russia, the Russian society, the various political forces, and what they say and what they want. Then the relationship, one more time, between Putin and Trump, revolving the attack on Russian military bases by Ukraine, and a few words about Zelensky and what's going on in Ukraine, our sort of standard staple of topics. I start with the Russian retribution. What we know now is a lot more about the targets that the Russian Air Force hit over the last few days, beginning from the 4th to the 8th or 9th of June. Now, the Western media, only the specialized, those who carefully monitor military action, have listed those attacks. But the mass media shows me all the time, and to you, of course, to everybody, the apartment buildings and the civilians who are running in the street, and as if the Russians are actually bombing apartment buildings and so forth. So let me now explain to you what happened in terms of the military action. The most important thing, of course, here are the strikes on military targets in Ukraine, in various parts of Ukraine, and you would be actually bored to listen to the whole list and the endless names of Ukrainian villages and towns and so forth. But the most important of all the important ones is the hit on the bunkers in the city of Lutsk. And I checked several sources, and they give the following statistics: that 56 Storm Shadows were destroyed, 53 ATACMS missiles, US, destroyed, 33 Patriot missiles destroyed. Now that means that in this one blow, the huge stockpile of Western weapons that cost millions have been wiped out. In addition to that, the Russians hit the Antonov airplanes factory, which produces drones, and several other very important issues. Some of them were hotels where foreign advisors or mercenaries lived. Another hit was on the infamous, or for the Ukrainians, famous detachment of drone operators under the code name of the leader Madyar. This was destroyed too. So this was a fury, really, Putin's fury. The retribution was spectacular, by far exceeding the number of targets and the number of hits than ever before. Now, the specialists, the military specialists, say the Russians overcame the Ukrainian air defense by saturating it with various drones, and once the Ukrainians tried to hit them, then they put the Iskander hypersonic missiles, and so on and so forth. So, but for my purposes, what's important is that this is on a much larger scale. But even that is not enough, speaking of the Russian position. More important, long term, is the change now, which is being prepared in legal terms, from the transitioning from the special military operation to anti-terrorist organization. As the specialists tell us, the anti-terrorist operation means that it is possible to target terrorists, that you do not negotiate with the terrorists. And that means that the Ukrainian government itself and the Umerov and Zelensky and the military and Budanov, the chief intelligence agency, these are all now considered as terrorists, which means they could be hit. Now, this is a big transition after the attacks on the Russian airfields and especially on the civilian targets and on the passenger train. So the next thing that is so important that overnight is a change in the mood, both of the public and of Putin and his rhetoric. Now, as I recorded these videos, as you following, those of you who follow would notice that I referred to many times to some generals or to some analysts or some specialists who wanted to continue advance to Odessa and to Dnipropetrovsk and to Kharkov. Now, but these were just individuals. This was not official policy. Now, more and more, we hear not only from the radical statements of former President Medvedev, but also from Putin himself and virtually the entire spectrum of Russian opinion, except those who are subsidized by Westerners and Western media in the West. But in Russia, there's a kind of consolidation of a very radical patriotic agenda not to stop the war, not to stop at 4 provinces, and victory to the end, until full capitulation and destruction of Zelensky regime. So this is the fallout, the real fallout. In other words, if Zelensky thought that he would obtain a kind of a pressure on Putin that would force him to negotiate, this is what he's been saying all along, pressure on Putin to force him to accept a peace deal on Ukrainian terms. So this is the exact opposite effect. It had led to consolidation of pro-war, offensive forces in Russia, and it changed its war aims. Now, let's go to what has changed in the United States in regard to this war over the last week. Now, also significant changes and not in favor of Ukraine. First is that advisor to Trump, former advisor Bannon, and then General Kellogg, and many others began to say that the United States and Trump should not continue military aid to Ukraine. Why? Well, first of all, because it's a big danger to be dragged into World War III, because the attack on the airfields of strategic bombers, it not only is a violation of the START Treaty, but it also has a potential of Russian responding in kind to attacking American or some other Western British installations. And that is exactly what Zelensky wanted. He wanted the Russians to attack the West so that the West starts the war with Russia, and then Ukraine will have automatically its allies on the West. So this is the danger. Now, the reasoning of those people who are hawks, who really don't like Putin and who really don't like Putin to win, but they reason like this, what I can imagine. Zelensky wants more missiles. Okay, to defend Ukrainian sky, fine. So we give them more missiles. And that will extend their defense. It would make it a little longer that they could defend Ukrainian skies over Kiev. What does it give to the United States? Nothing. It gives the United States that Ukraine fights a little bit longer. Can it defeat Russia? No. What it takes to defeat the Russian army at this point, the United States does not have. There's not enough billions and billions more of missiles and more of this and more of shells. It's impossible. They tried it under under Biden, but it didn't work. So the reasoning is, why waste the Patriots on Ukraine when they can be needed in the Middle East? And this is exactly what happened yesterday when Zelensky publicly complained in a BBC interview that the United States deprived him of some air defense missiles and instead redirected them to the Middle East. So this is what changed. In America, there's a new mood among the MAGA people to just leave it alone and let the Ukrainians and Russians fight it out, even if the Russia wins. But a more serious problem that is between Trump and Putin is that some analysts, like Alistair Crook, believe that Trump knew about the coming operation against the Russian airfields. Now, suppose that he did know, and in that case, he took enormous risk that the escalation would be provoked. Now, there's another chance that he did not know, and in that case, it's even more serious. That would be another case when American special services or CIA, together with MI6, acted without the presidential permission. This is probably even more embarrassing to Trump vis-a-vis Putin, that he sort of knew or didn't know. If he knew, that means he's not to be trusted. If he did not know, that means he couldn't be trusted either, because that means he's not in control of his own government. So in both cases, Trump lost in terms of his power, prestige, and respect as a leader of a superpower, confronted with a situation that he knew or didn't know about, the attack on strategic bombers of a nuclear power, the only one in the world that is on par with the United States. So the next thing that is important is that Trump is in trouble. As we all know, he has trouble with the Republican Party, with Senator Graham. He needs every vote for his big, beautiful bill, and he may not get it if the Hawks, together with the Democrats, vote against him. And so he's really trying very hard to act as if everything's under control, but in fact it isn't. And Putin is now using this situation to his full advantage by delivering a crushing blow to Ukraine. And finally, there's interesting developments in Ukraine itself. And that is that there is a kind of a brewing explosion internally. And I think that more and more the military brass in Ukraine understands that the war is lost. And it's only a matter of time before Russian troops would take this or take that. And they're all talking about the summer offensive and the Russian breaking through to Kharkov and Odessa. And the question is not whether the Russians would win, but when and where they would stop. And in that context, there is more and more deserters. There are more and more videos of resistance to draft that is going on in Ukraine. There are also shocking videos of retreating soldiers in Ukrainian lines that are being shot at. That's couldn't be confirmed or denied, but I saw those videos. In other words, there's a kind of a turbulence in Ukrainian society, and this is kind of a brewing discontent that the war is going nowhere, and the leadership, which is Zelensky and his people, steadfastly refuse to conclude any deal. And any new deal the Russians are signaling, if they will ever get back to the negotiating table, would be much worse and harsher conditions. But even in this case, Zelensky is steadfastly refusing to concede anything, and that would lead to a resolution sooner or later, probably sooner than later. So, and finally, last point that also happened this week is a humiliating visit of Chancellor Merz, whose visit, conversation lasted only slightly over half an hour, and who probably came to ask permission or a sort of a nod to giving Taurus missiles to Ukraine. And from anything that I've heard about it, he got a no from President Trump. And so now they're trying to devise a scheme as if the towers missiles were actually produced in Ukraine and they're not really towers and they're Ukrainian made and so on, so that Zelensky could use them. But if he does use them, and if it is proven that they are towers or German made, then the Russians now have announced publicly that they would hit where it came from, including Germany if need be. So that's where we are in this kind of turning point, perhaps, of the war and the beginning of a crushing blow to Ukraine and to Zelensky. Now, please subscribe to my channel. I remind you that a lot of historical data on Putin and Russia is in my book, featured here, From Vladimir Lenin to Vladimir Putin, Russia in Search of Its Identity. And I always encourage you to write your comments. I love reading them, responding to them, and I'll see you soon with another edition of Issues of Contemporary Politics with Dr. Brovkin.